Hi, everyone. Welcome. Azure Cosmos DB Live TV. Thanks for being with us today. My name is Mark Brown, and this is episode 3. In today's episode, I'm just going to spend however long it takes going through our .NET SDK, and I'll live code up a real simple data access layer, and then we'll explore the SDK. Just show you little bits and pieces of cool stuff in there and hopefully answer questions. And hopefully this will be helpful to you if you're new to Cosmos and new to our SDK. Hopefully you'll get some value out of today's session. So with that, why don't we just get started? Okay, so I've got a little Visual Studio project here. And I've got a few things just kind of stubbed out here just to save some time. Let's walk through some of the pieces here. So I've got a function here to create a family object, query, do a get, update an object, delete. I'll also show you how to do a transaction. And that's that. So let's get started here. First thing I need to do is I need to add a reference to our SDK. So let's go in here and we'll find this one, Azure Cosmos. There we go. And we'll go ahead and install that. And good. Okay, ready to go here. Okay, so first thing we need to do is we need to define what our data is going to be. So down here, I have a little class, a little Poco, and I've got a little object I'm calling family here. It's got an ID, first name, last name, and then an age. And in here, I'm using this JSON property here, where I can go and I could map the property or property itself. It's stored in Cosmos DB, and then have a public getter and setter here. And you can see all of these right here. So this will be the object that I'm going to serialize and deserialize in and out of Cosmos. So first thing is, let's create some variables here. Static string. I need my URI, and I need my key. And I need a reference to my database ID, and we'll call that database1. And oops, I can't type. String container ID, and we'll call that families. Okay, next I need a reference to my container object. So, missing using statement here. Azure Cosmos. Container, and that's container. And I need a reference to my client. There. Okay, so got these things all set up here. Now I need to put in my URI and my key. Now you wouldn't normally do this when you're writing a proper production app, embedding your URI and your secret keys within your application. But just in the interest of speed, we're gonna do it this way. And I'm gonna use the emulator here. So perfectly safe. So we'll stick that in there, and let me grab our primary key. And this is the same all the time for the emulator. So you're not giving away any secrets here. And if you're new to our emulator, I can show you around here. So this is the quick start page. This is where you can get the URIs and keys and primary connection string in here. And then here's the data explorer, excuse me, within here. And then if you want, you can create new containers, new databases. You can use manual or auto scale throughput in here. Just set your throughput, name of the container, and then the partition key within here. We're going to do this in code. So we'll put this thing down here. All right. So now let's get things kind of started. I'm going to new up a new client here. Oh, Cosmos client. And I need my URI and my key. There's some other options in here as well you can do. So like if I go Cosmos client options, oops, equals new Cosmos client options. There's a lot of stuff you can do in here. You can allow bulk execution equals true. So if you want to ingest a bunch of data, you can use the bulk mode here. That'll help better saturate throughput within there. You can set the region that the application is running in. This will tell it which region to connect to. You can also set preferred regions in here as an array. That way, if a region fails over, it'll fail over to the next region you put in there. If you prefer, you can just use this and set it to the local region. And then if that region fails or the Cosmos account does a failover, it'll just fail over to the next closest region. So you don't have to use, you have to use one or the other within here. You can't use both at the same time. You can override the consistency level in here. So if you have like a session level of consistency or a stronger level of consistency, you can set it to a weaker level in there. You can only go weaker. You can't go stronger within there. Enable content response on write. This is beneficial if you're ingesting a ton of data or if you're writing data and then you don't care about the response object. So what it'll do is it'll stop from sending anything back on the response object. So that can save on bandwidth and just overall make it run a little more quickly. Lots of other stuff in here. You can set request timeouts. You can create your own custom serializer, web proxy, lots of different things in there. I won't go through all of them, but some of the important ones there definitely allow the bulk execution is good. And then setting your application region is another option you can set. You don't have to set it. We're not going to set it here. But just wanted to show those to you there. Okay, so I need to create a database here. So equals await client, whoops. And we're going to create database if not exist async. And I'm going to pass in my database, whoops. Base. I'm just typing there. There we go. Where are you? All right, and let's do the container. Wait, and that's database create container if not exist async. And I'll pass in the container ID here. And then I need to pass in my partition key, and that's going to be last name for us here. And then last, I need to set it a throughput amount, and I'm just going to use the minimum 400 RU. All right, so this will new up a new Cosmos client, and then I'm going to create a new database if it doesn't exist, and then I'll create a new container if that doesn't exist. So all those are ready to go there. Okay, so this is what you need pretty much at the start of any application when you're talking to Cosmos is get your client and then get your references to your database, and then of course your container objects. Everything you do throughout the life of your app is going to be through one or more of the containers that you've got in your application. So that is it for the starter app. Let's now create our create function here. So I've got a function stubbed out here. It's going to create a new family and return that object here. So here's my family object that I'm creating in here. And then here's the return. And this is null, so it's complaining to me now. So let's make this not null. So equals new. And then what I'll do is ID equals, whoops, what's going on there? New family. Oh, I see what I'm doing. Live coding, folks. ID equals, and we'll just create a GUID here. GUID, new GUID to string. And first name equals Mark. Last name equals Brown. And age, I may vary. Well, we'll just put 30 there. It may or may not be true. And we can always update it later, right? Okay, so what is, fix that. And there we go. So we've created our new family object here and populated it with some data. Okay, now let's insert it. So I'm going to do response, and I'm going to type this to my family object, and response equals await. Oops, container. Now to create a new object, we're going to call create item async, and type that to my family object here. And that takes, whoops, I pass in my family object here, and I'm going to pass in my partition key. So new partition key and family last name. That's the value. I see this question a lot from folks on Stack Overflow is you're passing in, I see what people are doing is passing in, instead of this, they pass in something like this, or actually it'd be like this. And then they're confused why they're getting an error. And it's not asking for the property, it's actually asking for the value, because Cosmos wants to know where to route your data in there. Okay, so that's going to create the new item there. And then we'll do, I have a little print function here, resource. And we'll print that when it comes back. And let's also print out response request charge. So if you're curious in the response object, lots of stuff in here. You have an E tag that you can use for concurrency. Cosmos uses optimistic concurrency, so you can check the E tag when you do an update, and if it's changed, you can fail that, go do a read again, and then go ahead and then do your update. Some headers in here. This is the resource itself, so it's the thing that we actually inserted. So if you enable if you use that option earlier, enable response on write instead of defaults, this thing will have nothing in it. And then your status code. This is an HTTP status code, and you can check that if you want. But if that works, that'll come back as a 200, I think, or 201. What's wrong with this? Oh, that's right, right line. There we go. Okay. And what is wrong with this? Oh, that's right. Sorry. Get rid of this right here. Okay, good. There's our create function right there. Next, let's go and we're going to create a query now. So here's my query function. And in my query, I'm going to pass in my last name here and then also the ID as well within there. So because I need my last name for, I want to do an in partition query. So you want to pass in the partition key for that. Okay, so I've got a new family object here. I'm just going to new that up. I need a query, so let's do string SQL equals, and we'll write select star from C, where c.id equals @id. Okay, so and now I'm going to create my my query here. So the feed iterator, and then result set equals container get query item iterator, and that's going to get typed as family. Okay. Whoops, what am I doing? Okay, so need create a new query definition. So query definition here, that's going to pass in my SQL string. And then take my parameter. So with parameter, and that's at ID, and then pass in the value I've got there. And then my request options here. And new query request options. And pass in my partition key here. Partition key and last name. Okay, and then finish that up. There. So this is how you define a query within Cosmos. Okay, so get item query iterator, and then create your query definition. Pass in any parameters, and then set your request options. And here we're doing an in partition query, so I want to pass in the partition key. If you don't create this and you don't pass in the partition key in your where statement, it'll be a cross partition query within there. Okay, so next let's do this. So while results set has more results, and then create a feed response here, and that's a family type. And here's my response equals await result set and read next async. Okay, so that's going to execute the query there. And now let's for each through all of our results. So family 1 in response, and we'll add, actually I want to create, let's do this, we'll call that families, and then this will be family, add family. Good. So we'll add that to our list of families there as we loop through all of that. And then I can console write line, write the request charge there as well, and see how much that cost. And then we'll return our list of families through our query there. So that's a query right there. Pretty simple. Just going to return a single person. And in fact, if you only have a single row you want to get, and you know the partition key and the ID for the data, you can do what's called a point read. And let me show you that next. So here's a little point read, and it's going to return a family object here. So let's start this one. So this will be a response family response equals await container read item async, and we'll deserialize that as a family object. Oops, here I'll start. And that takes two things: ID, which is the ID here that I'm passing in, and then my partition key. New partition key, last name. We'll get you show the request charge for that. Turn response resource. Okay, so that's a point read. Very simple. The most efficient read operation you can do in Cosmos is doing this, read item async, and then passing the partition key and the ID for the item there. Okay, so we've got a create, we've got a query, we've got a read. Next up, let's do an update here. So I've got my update function, and I'm going to pass in my family object. So we will just call await container, and the function for the method for this is replace item async, and type it as that. And that accepts our family object, and then ID equals ID. Oh, actually, family ID, and then partition key family last name, and then item request options. Now I'll show you if you want to set this. You can go if match etag equals response. Well, I don't have it here, but if I had the etag, this is basically how you would pass it in, is response etag. If I had another response object that I was, or if I had the etag, this is basically what you would pass in. Is just like that. I'm not going to do that here, so let's just get rid of this. And there we go. So that's, oops, what am I missing here? Oh. So that's replace item async. That does the update. Then if you want, you can do concurrency checking there with the etag if you're passing that back within there. We're not going to check it here because this is keeping this very simple. Okay, next up, let's delete an item here. So this is also a very simple one. So just await container, delete item, async, and family here. And then this is basically just the ID and the partition key. Last name. So that's that. Very simple. And next up, let's do the transaction. This is cool. I love this. Uses a new feature called transactional batch. I don't know how new it is, but it's relatively new. And before you had this, you had to use stored procedures, which you write in JavaScript. Now you can do these using our SDKs. And I think it supports up to 100 different operations when you run it. So, you can do quite a bit of things with this. So let's create a new family object here. And so ID equals GUID, new GUID to string. What we'll do is we'll create a couple of family members here. And then we'll insert them. We'll insert them all at the same time in a transaction. All right, last name equals, of course, Brown. And age equals 25. Okay. Now let's go ahead and we'll just quickly copy that. And we'll create another sister, maybe. Mary Brown. Okay, change the age there. So, okay, now I'll show you the magic in this. So, transactional batch response, batch equals await, whoops, container, whoop, create transactional batch. And it takes, as you might expect, a partition key, and we'll just call that Brown here. We'll just hard code that in. Yep. And then create item family one. Create item Emily, oops. And we'll add our second guy in here. And as you can see, you can create item, delete item, you can read item, and you can update items in here as well, or you can upsert as well. So you have all the basic CRUD operations you can do in here, and then you can just string up to like 100 of these things in here, and then execute it all as a transaction. So transactions in Cosmos are scoped to a partition key, which is why it's asking for a partition key value here, because you can only do transactions inside of a partition or a logical partition within Cosmos DB. So, all right, call execute async on that, and then we'll print out the request charge on that one as well. Batch request charge. Good. Okay, so that is all of the functions all done up. Here's my little print object here. So I'm just doing this little cute little thing here. So I'm just calling JObject and then from object and just passing it in and then just writing that out. And that'll just basically write this out to the console in here. So I think I did everything right. I don't see any squiggly lines. Let's see if Visual Studio is not reporting any errors in there. Let's go ahead and do a build. And build succeeded. Everything's good. Okay, so why don't we go through and I'll step through this guy and see if I actually did this. So we'll go and fire this up. And here's our little console here. And okay, let's see. We'll shrink this a little bit here. Let me get my console here so we can see what we've got going. Just adjust the screens here a little bit. Okay, so get my reference to my client here. So we'll instantiate that, and then we're going to create a database and create a container. Okay, so let's go and look. Let's go and look in here. And let's see, did it create? And there's my database, and there's my container right in there. Last name is my partition key, and 400 RU in there. So that worked fine. Okay, so next up, let's go ahead and we'll do my create here. So stepping into this, create a new object, and then call create item async. And let's see what we got. So I'm going to print there it is. There's my object right there. And then let's print the request charge on that as well. And you can see that was 6.67 RU within there. So then return it. Whoops. Turn that. Okay, now let's go back into here. And let's see. Did it write it? Yes, it did. And there's my object or my family member right there. Great. So that worked. Okay, next, let's run the query here. So I'm just going to query for myself that I just created here. So I've got the last name and the ID here, and we'll run this function. So here we go in here. We're going to new up a list of families in here, and then there's my query, and then execute that, and has more results. This should say true. Yes. So we'll go ahead and run that. Now in my response, you can see I've got my family object in here. Let's go ahead and loop through that. Yep, and there's my family right there, and there it is. Great, add it to the list. And no more in there, and that request charge on that is 2.93. Write that out. And any more results? Nope. So then return. Great. So that was the query there. All right, now let's do the point read. So this is going to call my get function here. And that'll call read item async. And it's going to pass in my ID and my last name. Okay, now let me show you the request charge on that. And as I said, that's the most efficient way to get data out of Cosmos. And there you can see it's just a single RU. So any payload that's a kilobyte or less doing a point and read is always going to cost just a single RU. So definitely the most efficient way to read data out of Cosmos. If you have high volumes of reads that you do like this, definitely use a point read rather than a query, because you can see the query is nearly 3 times more expensive at 2.93 RU. Okay, I'm going to return that. Now we'll do an update. So we'll change my age here to 40, which may or may not be true. And then we'll call our replace item async. And we're going to pass in the updated family object. And then I'm going to need my ID and then, of course, the partition key so I can do that update. So we'll call that. And that worked okay. Next up, we'll do the family transaction here. So this is my favorite, using the transactional batch. So we'll create a new family member here, and then new up another family member here. And then we'll call create transactional batch and execute async on that. And then you can see the request charge, 13.33. So yeah, roughly double, I guess, what you've got here for this. So that makes sense. Whoops. And let's go back to here. And then last, let's go ahead and we're going to delete. I guess we're deleting myself here out of the family. I guess I got kicked out. So, that just ran and just deleted me. Let's go back and look in here. So now what I should see is I'm gone. And then you got David and Mary in here. So, yep, I guess I've been kicked out of the family. So that was it. For a little simple little data access layer in Cosmos DB. So let's look at, I got some questions here. Just Frank's World here says, nice, thank you very much. Another question, why is the Cosmos DB emulator not available on Mac OS? Actually, we do have a preview available for a new Cosmos DB emulator. Which will work on the Mac OS. It's available now as a Docker image. If you reach me on Twitter, just DM me on Twitter. I can hook you up. Just send me your email address, and I can send you some details on how to download and use that. But it's available now in the Docker library now. But let me send you some details on how to get it all set up, and you can try it yourself. I have to warn you, it is an early alpha version on there, so maybe have some rough spots around it. But other than that, it's we'd love to get you to test it and run it on there. So yeah, that's it for the episode for today. I hope you guys enjoyed it. If you have any more questions, you can ask them now. I can try to talk while I'm doing this. Oh, I know one thing I wanted to do. Here's the code. Why don't I commit this and I'll make this available to anybody that wants it. So I'm going to push this up into GitHub, and then I've got our Cosmos DB live TV repository right here. And I've put this up in here into our episode 3 EP simple net SDK. And here you can see I've got everything up in here. I'm sure I'm going to get a GitHub nasty email saying I put some keys in there. I guess what I can do is we'll go back in here and I'll take these out. So that way I won't get that nasty email from them. And then we'll save it and remove keys. And I'll commit and push that up. So here's just so you can see. So it's available here. GitHub.com, Azure Cosmos DB Live TV, episode 3 in here. I just put this right into there. There you can see it. So go ahead, feel free to download that if you want to play with it. Like I said, it's just very simple, but it helps get you over the basics there on how do you do a query. And then how do you do the basic CRUD operations, including the transactional batch, which I think using the SDK to do this is much easier than writing these out in JavaScript. At least for me, it is. I like it much better. So that's it for today's episode. I hope you enjoyed it. And let's see if there are any more comments. Nope. Great. Okay, well, that's it. Thank you much, everyone. And we'll see you next week. I've got another PM on our team, Rodrigo Souza, and he's going to talk about our Python SDK and walk you through that. So that's it. Thank you very much. Bye-bye. We'll see you next week.